All right, great. We actually have a pretty good group here today. I want to do a couple of things. I would like to maybe hear from some of you, those that are interested in sharing, a little bit about what brought you into the coalition. I think we can spend probably about 15, maybe 20 minutes on this. So I'd love to hear maybe from some of you, especially those of you that are maybe coming in from somewhere other than an ILC. I would love to hear what's brought you into the coalition. And again, feel free to make use of the chat as well. But okay, we got kind of a shy group here. I see William Higgins is sharing quite a bit of information in the chat about himself, and
yeah, it's glad to be part of the group coming in from the other side of the world, over in Maine. But
great, and I hope that we can make this a space that is useful and interesting to you.
Absolutely, because we have a lot of people we have a group on Facebook with over 500 people, and many of them are out in California.
Great. Oh, great. So you do have connections here in California.
Oh, God.
Disabled, homeless. Okay, cool. Great. All right. And then we have someone who is from the community as well. Richard, would you like to introduce yourself? If not, that's okay. I know it's an early morning.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, certainly can. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, this is Richard Gallo. I am a person with disability. I volunteer with Cal Voices, a nonprofit organization serving the mental health community, and I'm also a mental health worker at a local psychiatric health facility.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Sure.
And what's brought you into the coalition? That's okay. I think we may have lost Richard temporarily. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Angie Bagnus, and I am the Independent Living Community Education Coordinator at the Center for Independent Living called Access to Independence in San Diego County.
Great. It's really great.
I run the emergency preparedness workshops at our CIL. And we're also working on really trying to coordinate the effort with the county and our power provider to really serve our consumers in the best way that we can during an emergency.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Michaela, we're doing quick introductions. Feel free to speak up. This call is structured differently than the topic calls that you may be familiar with on the second Tuesdays. This is a much more group-focused conversation and activity rather than speaker-focused, at least for this particular meeting. We are trying to come together and identify some issues that we can work on to make some policy change. So I don't see this space quite the same as the Tuesday or the second Thursday calls, the policy or topic-driven calls. So feel free to give an introduction, Michaela.
So I guess I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep the conversation moving. My name is Bruce Morgan. I'm the emergency manager, public safety power shutoff coordinator for Rolling Start in San Bernardino. I also have the need for electricity when there's a PSPS event, given that I use a piece of equipment to sleep with. So basically, I'm involved with this program to help spread the word that there is help for those people who have that situation, who need to use electrical equipment during a PSPS event or even just a regular power outage event. Where I live, we have snowstorms and ice storms. So, those can knock off the power too. And those people that need that definitely need to be ready for it. So I also do a lot of disaster preparedness trainings.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, and over time, feel free, if in the future you feel like speaking up on one of these calls, we'll do a little short introductory period. I just wanted to kind of get things rolling by getting to know some of you a little better. So thank you for that opportunity.
And I know, Russell, I'll pop in. This Jim Kales, and I did some contract work with the disaster coalition here, and my interest in this call relates to the emergency work I do with health plans, and their role in helping people get durable medical equipment, like everything we CPAP and wheelchairs and scooters and suction machines and on. We all know about. But I've had a concern of late that the vendors that supply these things have no real responsibility to orient any of us in terms of options during emergencies. For example, sometimes I'm at a conference like National Council on Independent Living, and I'll go up to some of the vendor booths and I'll say something like, well, in an emergency where the power is up for a week or longer, what are my options for charging my scooter? And they look at me like they're a deer in the headlights. And I think, whoa, and that's happened several times. And I've talked to a lot of people who have said, unless they have a real connectedness with the vendor, they've never heard of any of this. They never get any kind of orientation about power outage, power alternatives. So that's my interest. Thanks.
Thanks, June. I appreciate that. That kicks us directly into our discussion that I'd like to have today. After this discussion, I'll give you a very brief update on some of the vaccine rollout from the state. The state is making some upcoming changes. Actually, I'll do that very briefly because there's not a lot of meat to it just yet. But the state of California has announced, the Department of Public Health has announced that they will be seeking to provide statewide coordinated transportation options through the MyTurn website coming soon, as well as at-home vaccination appointment availability through myturn.gov. So I'd like to just go ahead and open this up and talk a bit about what June brought up and say that one of the ideas that came to the two of us as we were talking a little bit about some of these issues was, what would it look like to have notification happen at the time that DME, like let's say that you're receiving a CPAP for the first time, and the DME company is required to send you a piece of paper that says, you should be aware that if a power failure were to happen in your area, that this device will not function the way that you would hope that it would. And these are the actions that you should take, So I'd like to hear maybe from some of you, first of all, what should be on that sheet of paper? What should we put on there? Where should people turn first?
So I'd like to jump in on that. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Services Manager for the Independent Living Resource Center, serving San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. I think on that sheet of paper should be information where an individual can locate their local center for independent living or independent living center. And it should allow somebody to be able to find whatever their center is, even if they move. So if somebody moves, you know, out of California, we want them to have the nickel or ILRU link to finding their local center. And then, you know, I don't know how into detail we'd like to get, but it would be really cool if we could, if they're localized, they could include the specific ILC that is nearby if they're living in that area. Or just for California specific, say, you know, contact CFILC if you're living in California. And then the other thing might be for the consumer to know how long their piece of equipment would require backup power for. So if they're a CPAP user, you know, this is the best battery for you. If you're a power chair user, this is the best battery for you. And so on and so forth, so that they can have an idea of, well, you know, a small battery is not going to cut it for my needs, or that would be the best thing for me. So giving them a little bit more information on what battery would be best suited for their needs.
Hi, Russell. Could I jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi. So we started working with our power company, and we've started having conversations with them. And some of the feedback that they've asked us to give to them would be wattage of particular DME that individuals are using, so that they can match the proper battery or generator to that particular piece of equipment. So having that power indication would be a much easier way for them to connect or provide, you know, a particular battery source to that person's need. So wattage and power need is very important.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have any kind of general, what kind of informational resources? I mean, I think there's probably two phases to this. You know, the sheet of paper would be something that probably, honestly, that DME companies are going to want, you know, to be uniform for all devices. Just, you know, again, they're probably, this is probably not likely to be a goodwill thing. It's probably going to have to be some kind of, you know, requirement from the state that this informational piece of paper be distributed, and it's probably going to have to be, you know, geared at all electric powered DME. So I think maybe one of the things we might want to think about is what would it look like to build an informational resource, like a web page or portal where all of this information lives. So I like the ideas. On batteries, is there anything else that anyone would like to offer on specific information that you think would be helpful for the community?
This Fidel Stack.
Go ahead, Fidel.
Yeah, let me turn on my video so people can see me. Maybe turn this thing down. My name is Vidal. I'm the System Change Advocate for Resources for Independent Central Valley. Here in Fresno, we have in catchment areas in Merced, Madera, Fresno, Kings, and Tulare counties as well. And one of the things that I love what's being said about what the equipment that needs power is and what it looks like. One of the things that we have here, we have quite a few folks here in our encatchment area that have bariatric wheelchairs. Now they require a whole bunch of batteries because just the size of the wheelchair and the capacity of the weight capacity, they require a lot of batteries. So I think putting some specific information regarding, as was said earlier, the wattage or the power of recharging. If you have one battery, 5 batteries, I think that really plays a role in prioritizing possibly for the future in regards to power? Over.
Thanks, Fidel. I see that we've also got Lauren has shared in chat, including their utility company's information, medical baseline, and local shelter with backup power resiliency. That's I think helpful. It could be kept general. Contact your utility company, enroll in medical baseline, and locate your local Red Cross. Kelly, would you like to speak as well?
No, my light just went off in my office.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I saw waving, and now I realize that you were waving at your light. Speaking of power and things turning off. And then Vincent shared that the Yeti 3000 can probably do 1 to 1.5 charges on heavy duty chairs. That's helpful information. I was curious about that myself. So,
yeah, just I think we're talking. Sounds like we're talking a couple of different kind of things. One would be just a better how to guide, because a lot of us don't know beans about wattage or even how to find it on the battery or how to like convert it into what we need to know in terms of a Yeti. And I mean there's a lot of things that people don't understand, like okay, so I can charge my device one time on a Yeti, but then what happens? So how long will let a Yeti last until it's drained? And is there anything I can use to get power from my vehicle? How complicated is that? What kind of dexterity do I need? Can I do it myself? Or, how complicated is it? And then I think from the people delivering the DME, it's another product. I hope it's not just a piece of paper, but it's a link as well, and it's available in alternate formats. And maybe the link has a couple of videos that somebody can refer back to. And that every time something is repaired or delivered, that the delivery people or someone has to have responsibility for orienting us to what the options are. Do I need to advocate that, with my health plan, that I need to buy this converter, or just some other ideas there? Back to you, Russell.
That's really good. I think that more and more it's sounding like that the best solution is creating we need the unified resource, like a web portal with videos and other informational, helpful basic information. And I do agree with June. I think that the average person is not going to know anything about Yeti batteries or wattage, or I think Vincent kind of made it concrete. Vincent, you've got your hand up. I'll pass to you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm in the van. I was doing deliveries or pickups today. Yeah, on the batteries, the one thing you can do is, if you're using a Yeti style battery, they have a time till empty. So what you can do is hook up all the items, whatever the person wants on there, and then it'll do an hours till empty on there. So that kind of helps determine when you're on the spot on there. But and too, a lot of the DME, even though it's like a CPAP machine, well, one brand will suck more energy than another brand and whatnot. So we've seen the best solution that we've had, because we could sit there and do the math and everything, but once we plug all the items in and it starts charging, then we kind of have a way to determine on there, that on there. So that's just kind of the way that we've been we've been kind of doing it. We do have like kind of an unofficial, like this should work, this shouldn't work on there, but every different product has a different amount of energy it takes on these batteries.
Hey, Vincent, what was the term you're using? Hours to what?
So on the battery packs, on the Yeti ones, like the 500, the 1500, the 3000, once you plug everything in and power up the battery, it'll have a time till empty. So it'll have an hour countdown of when it'll run till empty. So it'll kind of give you like, you have 6 hours if you're running these items on the thing before the battery goes dead. With power chairs, it gets kind of weird because once they get near the end of the charge, they kind of slow down. And sometimes that's why I had a heavy duty chair. I put it up, I jacked it up and then ran it till it died and then put on a charger, and it took about almost like 50 to 75% of the charge on there, but it'll have a time till empty.
I think that's helpful. All of that would be helpful to put on a video like this to even explain, how that time till empty works. I see that Bill has shared some interesting information about, how power is an interesting subject, and that sometimes the batteries needed can be huge, honestly. I will pass to Alyssa.
Marcus was just showing us the front of the Yeti and was showing us what Vincent was talking about. I don't know if everybody caught that.
Yeah, I was hoping to follow along. I can just put it back on the screen if anybody else wants to see this. But, so you have a meter that tells you the level of charge left in the battery and how much power it's drawing versus how much power is going into it. So that's what he was talking about, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So this actually is starting to look like it could be one of the videos in and of itself.
That's what
just
I was
kind of
thinking.
talking naturally, showing that time till empty, but also talking a little bit about what Vince was saying is that if you've got a high drain item like a power chair, it charges in a very non-linear fashion, right? It starts off pulling lots of power and then it might trickle down.
So I know we're talking information to provide to the client concerning their batteries, but something that keeps going through my mind is full accessibility. And if, we now have Yetis to provide, if we could provide solar stations also for individuals, I think that would bring us closer to access, especially when you're talking about usually the only people who have access to solar stations are individuals with a higher socioeconomic status. So I'm just putting it out there that would be amazing to see.
Thanks, Alyssa. And I'm sure somebody will speak up soon about solar, but solar panels are good for certain things. They can have to be, again, just like the batteries, there is a very large size that's required to produce like an equivalent amount of power that would fill something like one of the Yeti batteries. So that would be helpful, I think, as long as it's given in a context of this solar device might be good enough to charge your cell phone, but it might not be good enough to like run your CPAP or something like that. Because otherwise you're going to end up with solar panels that are very, very, very large and hard to.
Oh, well, I was thinking a solar panel that was capable of charging a Yeti, but if that's not realistic, then never mind.
I can jump in here. Our center has a number of solar panels which are designed to charge Yeti batteries.
Oh, okay. What's the footprint on them?
Do you mean size-wise?
Yeah.
I'd have to go measure it, but it's roughly 5 by 4, maybe a little bit bigger. And they're cumbersome. They're heavy. And they require quite a bit of monitoring to make sure that the sun is hitting it correctly. You have to go out in order to keep that battery charged. We found that they're not practical at all for people that are living in apartments or that have physical limitations. We've seen limited success with other people that might have caregivers, for example, can come out and monitor that type of thing. But so far, we've only really trusted them as kind of a last resort, and they're not anything really to practically rely on, at least in my experience. So.
Yeah, same here with this is Vince from CID. Yeah, we've got a Boulder 200, like a big heavy one, and I pretty much it might charge a 3,000 in a day, but I've seen 2 to 3 days, especially if you're not following the sun. In my situation, I've only seen it charge at it's 200 because it's supposed to put out 200 watts an hour, but it's really not putting out that 200 watts an hour unless you're really following the sun in direct sun, and you have to have some sort of ability to move it, and you have to bring the battery pack out to it, back and forth. So that's kind of another issue with it. It's not where you could just press a button and then everything will start working.
This is Bruce. If I can add to that, yeah, it's also very difficult to manipulate the solar panels. They weigh almost as much as the Yeti 3000 battery. They're extremely heavy, and you would need at least a 10 by 10 foot of open space to the open sky in all directions to really use the things effectively. And so many people don't really have that. They live in apartments or even small places that have even a back patio area. Not to mention, because you do need so much space and you do have to have the battery nearby, a lot of times the only place to do that would be out on in a lawn. And people that are using power chairs or just regular chairs, they don't have the ability to maneuver that heavy equipment around, and it's just not practical at all.
Thanks. It's unfortunate that harnessing solar power is a tricky thing. I also want to share that Vincent shared a instructional video, and I'm assuming that that's on the Yeti battery. Is that correct, Vincent? Yeah. So
the 3000.
The 3000. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. That may be a good template. Lauren also underscored the importance for the videos that we put together for informational resource purpose would need to be ADA compliant. That's absolutely true. And Lauren, you were there's no ADA compliant Yeti 1500X or Yeti 6000 videos that you're aware of.
Yes, I've looked for those, and they're kind of like informal, just regular average Joe reviews. But we really need them to be ADA compliant. We need captions, and then we also need other options like audio description of, move down the left panel and find, this particular slot for our older individuals who are blind. Because as it stands now, I'm doing in-person tutorials with people and helping them figure that out. So it can be challenging. And if we had a more universal video, even if we got Yeti or Goal Zero to be, changing their videos to make them compliant since they are receiving compensation for their items, then if we got them all compliant and we had multiple formats, we would be able to get those to the right people.
I think that's a really smart approach. And I think that actually, a lot of times we are very quick to take on the burden of producing media ourselves when really there is, I think, a real, a neat thing that happens whenever you work directly with the person, the company manufacturing the item and helping them along the way. It's not that, I mean, obviously, if you just tell them, hey, make this ADA compliant, they're probably going to be a little lost. But with support and help, I think that's really great. In fact, I think that as much, again, as you said, as much as they're invested in this process because they're the main supplier, I think encouraging them to make videos for all of them would be really helpful. I think that's one thing I hadn't thought of is Vincent and others who have worked with the time till empty features. Is there a way to make those accessible for folks that are low vision, or what kind of conversations have you had with people who are blind or low vision?
None really, unfortunately, on there. Yeah, but I did go through a bunch of training, and then yeah, with videos, yeah, audio description's huge right now, and the captioning on there. But yeah, pretty much a walkthrough, and then we usually share the video. But yeah, there's no like audio, no audio things on the Yeti battery, like to kind of tell you if you press the button or not, to tell you what's going on. You can hook it up to your cell phone, which we have not done yet. Then that might be able to like be kind of the segue on where it'll give you an alert or whatnot. So that's something I'd have to look into and see on it. Yeah, but no audio alerts, nothing like that. I mean, we could do, I'm going to probably do another video and make better visual descriptions on where everything's located on the battery. But yeah, and again, it won't audibly, it won't tell you verbally how many hours you have left till empty or anything like that. But gives me some homework so that I could go through and check and see if I can download the app, hook it up to our battery, and then see if we can maybe use any assistive apps that might be working in a cell phone or a tablet or something like that. So I got some homework.
That's a great idea, Vincent, with the phone capabilities. We'd have to check if the app is ADA accessible also. That's a problem with appliances, is some of them will make the same beeping noise for say like a washer. It might make just like beep, 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 like the same noise, and it wouldn't be an indicator of which button you're pressing. One of our solutions is we have a Braille label printer. So we have a Braille label maker, and then we could, label the buttons, or, that might be something Goal Zero looks at, is including that, or for the individuals that can't read Braille, having very large label print, and then sort of like a checklist guide, which is what I do for my disaster kits. So it's sort of like a numbered system with like very large print. And then we could also give them a magnifier for if their power goes out and they can't use their CCTV, because they have to privilege one of their other devices over that. I really like your idea of going back, and I really appreciate your videos. So I'm not saying that, I'm just saying we need to get more videos out there.
June, I want to just stick a pin in this systems change pin and say, as a big purchaser of these Yeti batteries, CFILC has some customer clout with the Yeti manufacturer, and given that the money comes from the IOUs, the investor-owned utilities, they also have clout to sit on the battery makers in this space and say, hey, are you aware that your videos are really not compliant, not accessible? So I like where this is going. You've got a two-prong, kind of approach. One is to do the problem solving now and do the homemade videos now, but not to forget that the advocacy power that we can harness and put the responsibility back where it belongs. And the other thing I just want to say is that I'm nervous and troubled by the fact that we're talking about, I feel like our lens is PSPS, public service public shutoffs. I'm sorry, public safety public shutoff. Anyway, and I worry about us losing focus on the fact that in emergencies coming more often, that these power outages may be much longer. They're not going to be PSPSs. And so, you know, we all know that Yetis have a very short life in the end. And so I think we need to think more deeply about, you know, what are the survival tactics going to be here? A la power.
Thanks, June. Yeah, I really, you know, I love that we had the conversation about the specifics of one manufacturer, because organized people and organized money are the ways to make change, and you've got both in that equation. So that's a rare opportunity. But I think moreover, though, to June's point, there are so many other types of disasters that can leave a person in need of, and maybe even evacuation, and trying to find another place to be able to reconnect these items and find a way to, you know, sustainably run their equipment. But there's just lots of things to think about, not just a short PSPS that a battery would suffice. So I think that, you know, again, going back to our resources, one of the valuable ones, of course, is going to be helping that individual identify where their independent living center is, the nearest one, and contacting them. But also, I think that you know, there was information about Red Cross, and even locating a power utility information, because I'm also wondering about, what about people who are traveling, or maybe they're not in their home area and they're experiencing one of these kinds of disaster situations where they may not be well connected. So I think kind of thinking broadly as much as possible, and understanding that power, especially power loss, like if it's for a short period of time, it's probably manageable. But if it's for an extended amount of time, there need to be other solutions. And I'm curious to hear what some of you kind of do to prepare, especially with wildfire season coming in advance. You know, what are some of the strategies? I know that partnerships with hotels are often part of that, but what does that look like?
I just want to jump in really quick. It's a little bit a deviation of the topic, but
Yeah.
for something that's long term, I'm working with OEM in my counties on disaster facility resilience. So they're now incorporating PSPS as part of their evacuation needs, and it's going to be categorized as a disaster along with heating and cooling centers. So they're looking at backup power solutions that they previously hadn't looked at before I started working with them. So that's something that everybody could address in their region, working with your local OEM to make sure that they're retrofitting their disaster care facilities and shelters.
That's great. Yeah, I wonder, has anyone looked at kind of resilience proofing their center at all? Or other place, if you're not located at an ILC, what is there something you're doing?
I'll jump on that again.
Yeah.
Because I'm also working with a climate change committee with the county as well. And it depends on a lot of factors with the buildings themselves. So whether they're capable of getting solar panels on the roof, you know, is it centrally located? Is it not centrally located? Would it be good for people in unincorporated rural areas? Would it be best for, you know, so there's a lot of factors that go into that. And it might be difficult to make a space that you're renting resilient if you're not going to be in it long term. It might be better to make a government building or school or shelter, something else more resilient, and then we can direct people to go there. It's a more long-term permanent solution.
That's helpful. Does anyone else have anything to add to kind of the resiliency conversation or resiliency planning?
This is Vince. I'm going to jump in on it then. We're renting our building, so we're pretty much under lock and key, and that's one of the issues. Like, we don't have any freedom to kind of do anything in the buildings that we're at right now because we're renters. If we own the building, that would be awesome. Then we can go through and start working on things like that to make everything more stout and more resilient. But right now we're just renting. So we've been and then during the PSPSs, we've been going to the local charge stations that they set up and kind of manning them for like an hour or two, and then checking in and letting everybody know that we're here, what we do and whatnot. So any emergency, the first place we're going to probably go is like, the local fire stations or, shelters or places where they have things. And especially with our durable medical equipment program, because I know a lot of people are going to need durable medical equipment, especially if there's a big emergency and they're getting sheltered.
Thanks, Vince. I'm curious, does anyone else have any intersection with any of the climate change conversations? That could be a really interesting space. I think maybe a lot of times those from my experience, those coalitions tend to be very forward-looking, as Alyssa mentioned. However, I think that a lot of times those spaces might miss the fact that there are on-the-ground concrete organizations doing support work right now. And I'm just curious if others have had experience and what that experience might have looked like if you have.
This is June. I'm not sure. I'm not well versed in this, but some communities have done more with their microgrids for certain neighborhoods, and sometimes I think some way of identifying them in terms of resiliency or your own emergency plan might be helpful, if that's even realistic or possible. But where are they? What are they? Sometimes hospitals are in those microgrid areas, and understanding more about, could they be used by people who are going to be desperate for, ongoing power source for the long haul.
I saw Lauren also said that they're looking at microgrids. I think probably, I would assume that hospitals are probably your really good source of kind of connecting to places that would still have power. But beyond that, I'm not sure. Again, this is something I think region to region is going to really, really, really vary. So I guess that's also a question: is what could we get from county level OEM folk that would be helpful, particularly, especially in rural areas? What kind of information could they provide to something that would be like a public facing resource?
I'm sorry, Russell, could you say that again? It kind of cut out on me.
Oh, I'm just wondering what we feel we could encourage county level OEM to provide in terms of like informational, easily digestible information. Like, for example, maybe these hospitals are resilient because of, they have a redundant backup power supply, and they're also on a microgrid, or, I don't know, but maybe you all know what kind of information we could kind of collect from OEM to help on a regional level, because we all know that, like, trying to guess at what's available in each region is really challenging. And if we assume that things aren't available and they are, then that's also kind of I think we're not doing a real good service there either.
So jumping on this again, it was a huge step for me to join the local OEM committees on their disaster care facility hazard plans. So I'm getting a lot of information from them about, the Red Cross shelters and things like that. But a huge thing that I've noticed is that they might not know which facilities are still good for use, which ones, need to be retrofitted and aren't ADA compliant. They don't have, the requirements that we need, the accessible bathrooms or cots or entrances or door widening, So I think that would really vary from county to county, because it does, and I'm on 3 counties, so the things that are in one county are different from things in another county. One of our counties has a DAFN coordinator at each shelter. They have a DAFN coordinator at the top level of OEM. That's not our staff working on that. They've hired their own DAFN specialist coordinator for disasters and emergencies. So I think that that's something that would be a good systems change, would be asking the county OEM to hire DAFN specialists if they don't have that already, and making sure that the shelters have the required things that are needed, like personal assistance for when people with disabilities end up in the shelter, because we don't want people with disabilities to end up in a long-term care facility if they don't have personal assistance at the shelter.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that it can be challenging to get people directly engaged, at that level with the OEM, but so advantageous when they are. Does anyone else have anything to share about experiences or connections that were really helpful to make?
This is Vince from CID. We made connections with our local CERT team, so in case of emergency, and then we were trying to tap them to deliver batteries, but we kind of got the brakes put on us because it wasn't an emergency. So they couldn't be activated on there. And also we stored some batteries at the local fire stations in the areas that are hit by the PSPSs. So we got like 2 stored out in La Honda. We have 2 in Half Moon Bay, and then a couple in Pacifica. And the CERT teams know where everything's at, and we're working hand in hand with our local fire departments on kind of giving the information of what'll work, what won't work, and that we're there, or that we're here. That's the main thing, is getting everybody to know that we're here. That's kind of like the biggest factors, know your independent living center.
So before they give one of those devices out, they reach out to you first, right? Your center.
Well, we are working with Central Coast Energy and CCES and another group, Peninsula Clean Energy. So they were giving batteries to consumers. So what we did is we worked with them. We partnered. We made a partnership at the beginning of the year, beginning of the last PSPS season.
Okay.
And we partnered with them because they were able to give batteries. So we said, we'll have, and then they were doing a lot of advertising. So we piggybacked on all the advertising with them and the local senior center in Half Moon Bay. And then what we did is we set up as a tier system. So they would go to those 2 places to see if they have a permanent solution on the battery. And then if they didn't work out, then we jumped in and gave them, the loaner battery, extended loan, long-term loan battery. And then if an emergency hit, they didn't have the manpower to jump on everything during an emergency. So that's where we stepped in. So Paul and I like pretty much split up and went to 2 different areas. I think I went south, he went north, and we manned the areas and did all the deliveries in a good amount of time. And they had us all on speed dial.
That's great. Yeah, I think that shows that's definitely a resiliency tactic to have them distributed out in the community where it's not just where they aren't all physically located at your center too. That's really smart.
Mm-hmm. And room. Those things are
they're large. Yeah, that's really great to have those community partnerships. Dan has shared in the chat, Dan Okenfuss, I cover legislation for CFILC. I was wondering if anyone is tracking state bills that help consumers inconvenienced by PSPS events. And if we can put a pin in that for just 1 minute, I see that Paul Cruz has his hand up, and then we can certainly spend a bit of time talking about legislation that people are aware of.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. Yeah, just to piggyback on what Vince said, and I think just to sort of like wrap up that conversation of where we can position as we work with like local government around emergency planning. One thing I think, that Vincent and I think everybody touched upon is the fact that not a lot of local government, not a lot of, folks in the Office of Emergency Management or Services, realize that the ILs have a level of, quote unquote, expertise with managing situations like this, like a power shutoff. And I think one thing that was successful for us was CID was able to prove and show that, by working with the local fire station, the local emergency response teams, that we have the ability to respond in that manner. And, again, last year was like the pilot year. We're hoping to do the same thing this year and really gather that momentum so that, that ultimately with the goal of like that trickling up to the level of, getting sort of a voice, once we start going into like local hazard mitigation planning and all of those bigger, statewide and countywide initiatives.
Thanks, Paul. And that kind of just struck an idea with me too. There's something that you said kind of resonated an idea. And that's that perhaps, and I don't know if this occurs already, may not, do county level OES have any kind of required training for DAFN? And if so, does that include connection to a local ILC? Because I think that the top level, honestly, OEM staff need to be made aware that ILCs exist and that they are organizations to partner with. Just like, I would think that 100% of all OEM employees everywhere know of Red Cross, for example. However, ILCs probably haven't yet hit that saturation level. So I'm wondering if there could maybe one potential systems change project could be to require training at all county level. Any thoughts on that? Is that happening at some level already from those of you that are more in the work than I'll be real honest. This is disaster preparedness work is a tiny slice of what I do as an organizer, but I ask these questions of those of you that are far more entrenched in this work than I.
I'm about to meet with OEM right after this meeting, so I'll certainly bring that up. But I think it's critical. I mean, we're supplying people with things that they need to live through a disaster, emergency, PSPS, and we really don't want to limit ourselves to just PSPS. I know that that's what we have to do, but we really don't want to do that. If the power gets knocked out for a windstorm or something else, we don't want to put people's lives at stake over over what's, written on the paper.
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. And thank you so much for your participation. And yeah, thanks. Okay, Vincent offered disability etiquette training would be a good way for ILCs to introduce themselves. I think that's absolutely true, and disability culture and awareness as well. Yeah. Jan.
I'll jump in with regards to our Kern County Office of Emergency Services. They have a team that we are part of that we started a couple of years ago, I guess, prior to the PSPS happenings. That includes public health, our AAA, different county department offices, again, along with us. So we're all part of the ongoing meeting and offering of emergency services, especially with our, battery program and emergency planning training, any referrals coming in. They reach out to us immediately, knowing that specific people who either contacted a fire department or directly to OES or even our AAA. The last PSPS season, we had intake forms coming in, daily with people calling and needing batteries. So we're very well connected. In fact, my note was to remind myself to, while we were talking about this, to set up a meeting for the new season so we can be on board, especially with all the different size batteries we have, and kind of following up with what this discussion is taking place today.
Thanks, Jan. I also want to, just underline too that, I think it's more than batteries too. Just be sure that you're having the conversations about, even just a full presentation about what your organization is, what it does, how to connect with people with disabilities, how to communicate with people with disabilities, a lot of, I think those really basic, the two-way communication can be improved quite a bit. So it's good. It is good to hear though there that in Kern County that it sounds like there's a real opportunity already. I just know that in some counties it can be really challenging if there's not if there's not an instrument or a committee or commission or a body that's meeting already. It can be really, really hard to get something going.
And I'll also add to that, this is Jan again, that anytime we do any type of community presentation, it does cover all the services that ILCKC offers, but it also covers any type of emergency planning because, of course, we have a major fault that's coming through Kern County. We have a dam that is old and needs to be restructured, and a possibility of breakage and flooding with that, as well as our high mountainous areas with the high fire risk areas. And we also do disability etiquette training because we've had companies contact us that have had their hands slapped due to inappropriateness in dealing and interacting with people with disabilities. We were even contacted, I'll say, happily, we did disability etiquette training with our national park systems. Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks reached out to us, and I personally went up to the two parks and did disability etiquette training with park rangers and anyone that deals with the public at the two parks. So we've been fortunate to be able to be part of that.
Great. That's really great. Thanks. All right. I'd like to loop back to Dan's offer to discuss any kind of legislation or upcoming work events. I see that you're attempting to communicate. Are you?
Hi, everyone.
Sorry, that's my nervous twitch. I start
gotcha.
signing when I
gotcha.
Yeah, sorry.
So Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. I am monitoring a number of legislation on PSPS events, public safety power shutoff events. And there's one that we are going to be, CFILC is going to support by Senator Dodd, who's, up there in the Napa and Sonoma area, has got a lot of fire prone areas there. Senate Bill 52. and it is a bill that will allow local government emergency centers, county emergency centers, to recoup some of their expenses related to PSPS events by declaring them a quote de-energization event, and that therefore they would get some disaster relief. So that's one way to, and I just want to know if are the counties, my question is, yes, we're going to support this bill. My question is, are the county emergency centers in your areas providing any kind of relief for people with disabilities?
I haven't checked into the issue yet. This is something new to me. Hadn't considered it, and it's one of the things I'd like to follow through on with my local organizations. You know, Cumberland County is the biggest county in Maine as far as population.
Okay. I put a link to the bill in the chat.
Thank you. I'll pop it up.
It just got out of the Senate today, so it's got a lot of potential, and it's on its way to the Assembly.
Yeah.
Is there any other? Yeah, sorry.
There must something that we could, try to put into Maine for the emergency for next session. I think all the bills had to be filed by a certain date for this session. But
yeah, we go almost year round. We go from January to September.
Good luck with that here in Maine. Thank you.
I was just curious if there's any other legislation or any efforts they've heard in their counties on this issue.
I don't know. I know there's some, we have outages due to the winter time happening, but I'm not sure what consideration has been done for, considering people with power chairs and things like that. They need. I'd have to check with Central Maine Power and see what they have. What regulations they act under to be able to provide emergency service for individuals. So.
That's all I have on this topic, Russell.
Thanks, Dan. And also, I would like to, feel free at any time if folks have pieces of any kind of disaster-related legislation that they're looking at, that they're made aware of, please let us know, and I will make sure that Dan gets a hold of those too. All right. We've had a really good discussion. Has anyone who's not had the opportunity to share, would anyone like to kind of add anything to this discussion that we've had?
Hi, Russell.
Yeah, go ahead, Angie.
Hi. So I just wanted to say that I had contacted a rep from our Red Cross here in San Diego, and he got me connected to a group here called VOAD, Volunteers Organizations After Disasters, and that's where I ended up getting connected with a better connection with the OES and SDG&E and the Red Cross and all types of other nonprofit and volunteer organizations that step in when there's a disaster. So being part of that VOAD, and they meet monthly, really helps me to feel like we're connected as an ILC here in San Diego.
Thanks. And I see that Bruce is sharing that Rolling Start is also a member of a VOAD, or some of them I guess are called COADs, which I'm guessing that the C stands for community. So yeah, I'm curious, for those of you that are in those spaces, do you find that information flows well from OES and or OEM to those organizations, and more importantly, does the information from the VOAD kind of influence? So in other words, do the OES and OEM folks know all of the resources available even in their own VOAD?
This is Jan. I'd say probably not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I can speak to that. It's the job, as far as rolling starts rolling in COAD and VOAD here in San Bernardino County. It's the job of the COAD or VOAD managers to let the local Office of Emergency Services know what organizations are available to respond in a disaster and what things that they are able to bring to the table. So, for example, one of the things that Rolling Start is able to bring to the table would be the batteries, in case somebody called the local emergency services and said, hey, I have equipment, my power's out, and I need help in some way. Then the local Office of Emergency Services would contact the VOAD and say, hey, is there anybody that provides this kind of service? And then we respond by telling them who that would be and what the contact information would be. COAD and VOAD doesn't respond directly generally, but they are a source for the local OES to find out who may provide those services in their county. So it's an important communication between the OES and organizations that are out there. That's why it's really important. Every ILC should be involved in a COAD or VOAD. And depending on the county, some have both, some have only one.
Thank you for that. All right, let's see, Lisa, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that the work that we're doing, with PG&E and Southern California Edison and that kind of thing with the public safety power shutoffs, it's not just about batteries as much as it's also inclusive of emergency preparedness plans specifically personalized for the people with disabilities that are going to need support in emergencies, and helping them put together their own personal bag of things that they would specifically need for disaster purposes. I know when we were talking at the conference last week, there was talk about, people often forget their CPAPs. And there was a suggestion by one of the people that attended to put the CPAP bag on top of or with their go bags, so that it's usually, kept in the bedroom for reasonable reasons. And that's not one of the things they think about, but in having the bag there, it's something that they remember to go grab before they actually leave. So I think a lot of, the conversations that we're having, I think we're able to share different information that we're getting from different sources. Preparing for a public safety power shutoff is obviously significantly different than preparing for an earthquake or a flood. Those are huge disasters. And the wildfires also, you might have, we were having a conversation just yesterday, you might have 5 or 10 minutes to get something together. In a wildfire, you might have 30 minutes, and what are those things? Make a list of those things that you need to grab first and then go down your list and make sure you grab them. But the work that we're doing is really trying to get out to not just the disability community, but all of the organizations that can support the community with a variety of resources. And I know PG&E has worked really hard with us at CFILC to get their messaging with disability people correct in the way that they're putting out their information, and using the right language, and learning. In fact, in our last meeting with PG&E, some of the upper management people said, they want to find a way to, they're making these batteries permanent loans, whereas in the beginning they were temporary. They were used just during the shutoff, and now they realize that whenever the power goes out, these people are in danger. Their medical health is in danger, and they don't want to reach them to return the batteries anymore. They want, when they qualify for this program, if their medical equipment can be sustained by these batteries, they want them to keep them year round, because there's no telling when power will go out for one reason or another. And it's not always PG&E's fault the power goes out. But they certainly have a big sticker on their back pointed at them for being the reason for several fires that we're all aware of. And the same thing is starting to happen with California Edison, Southern California Edison. So, I mean, it's just the work that we're doing. It's groundbreaking, and it's new, and we're still in a pilot. We're learning a lot by making mistakes, and just patting each other on the back to keep going. So I just want to commend everybody that's on this call right now that is doing the work. It's been a lot of work, and several of us, I'm engaged in each and every public safety power shutoff for PG&E. We don't have that relationship yet with Southern California Edison. So if anybody has a connection there, we can try and work with. We've been trying to get in touch with them and get them involved in a similar program, but it's just not, they're not taking the disability community. It doesn't feel like, I should say, it doesn't feel like they're taking the disability community and their safety as much as importance as PG&E is. And PG&E has been devoted to this now for 2 years, and they're going into our third pilot year. And I just think there's a lot of work to do. So, and I just appreciate all the work that everybody's doing in this regard. And the batteries, it's hard to tell what I think Vincent, nailed it when he said, different manufacturers, the age of equipment, it's gonna, there's no real sheet that we can create that's going to be standard across the board, because the way everybody uses their equipment, and are they only using that? They should only be using the equipment that they need in the battery. And I'm sure that when their power goes out and they can't charge their cell phone and they don't have a portable, they're sticking it into the battery, and it's going to deplete what they really need to use it for. Not to minimize the importance of a cell phone, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth on this. I'm just excited to hear and see everybody participating. So that's it for me. Does anybody have anything to share on their end as far as the experiences with the public safety power shutoffs and the community resource centers that are open during those times? Does anybody even know what I'm talking about? Community Resource Center. Community Resource Center is a location that PG&E sets aside that will actually have power, and they'll have some food and snacks for people. They'll have information on the DADAR program. Hopefully the ILCs can make a stop by and drop off their information and talk to people there to see if they need any kind of support during the event. I know that there's a few centers that drive by with batteries in hopes of finding people that are without power that have disabilities and need the support. And that's been helpful. But yeah, the CRCs, if you can get to a CRC, you can probably get power. And you can charge up a few things. So anyway.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Lisa, we were actually, this is Marcus at Skill. We were actually able to open twice as a CRC in conjunction with Southern California Edison here, which is something our director set up. I can get more information if anybody is interested in that. But while we didn't have very much traffic, it was, I thought, a pretty valuable resource in the community.
Can you tell us where you're located?
Yeah, we're in the city of Claremont, California.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, California. But
We got a few out of state here. Or at least we got Bill.
Marcus, this is Dan. Do you get any reimbursement or any kind of funding from the counties or the states to help run your CRC?
Yes, that's the short answer. I don't know exactly how much it was, but I know there was compensation that came from Southern California Edison. So again, if anybody is interested in doing that, I can direct you towards our director, Larry, and he can get you that information.
This is helpful for me. This is actually, I'll be honest, my first time hearing about CRCs. So it appears that CRC is a piece of this conversation, just as the batteries are a piece of this conversation. So perhaps, maybe it might be helpful to do some community education around CRCs and how to find them and how to, know how to connect with them in advance too. I think that that's vital for the community.
Let me share a little bit more about them. Thank you, Russell. It's always good to hear from those who aren't aware of these opportunities during these events. The CRCs open strictly during public safety power shutoffs. PG&E makes arrangements for them. Sometimes they're in buildings, sometimes they're in tents, and I don't know how they have power there, but they do.
Lisa, just a truck.
Or it's just a truck, yeah.
Generator, yeah.
But I know that there isn't a list of where they'll be, because it's not until they know where the public safety power shutoffs are going to be that they're going to know where the CRCs are going to be. So yes, they have standard ones, but they also have to plan outside of the box for those outlying areas. I know that the people that work at Drail in the Central Valley, they cover, I think, 7 counties, and they get really rural, and it takes them a really long time to deliver battery when we get a message from the emergency operating system or services from PG&E during an event. As soon as we get those messages, we have to give service. That just makes it tight. But yeah, we don't get a list of the CRCs until the public safety power shutoff is actually happening.
Thanks.
And this is Jen. I'll add to that. The medical baseline customers are notified directly by their utility company, so they will know where the CRC is, well, whether it's an actual location, building, or just a utility truck that's in a certain area. And they'll give you the address, location, or the intersection that they're parked at.
Yeah, they're also listed during an active event. They're listed on their website too.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay, so they do have a dedicated place on the web. Does, to your knowledge, do any of the power providers provide in addition to medical baseline, do they provide text notifications through county level emergency access information that goes out? Like, for example, if there were to be a PSPS in a region that I'm in, is there a way that the county could push out, PSPS is happening, these are the places that a CRC is functioning if you have medical devices that need powering in order for your access?
Yeah, I do know that when a public safety power shut off, we get notified. I have to be careful. They do send out text messages to all their medical baseline people that are registered for medical baseline.
Yep.
They send out text messages, and they ask people to respond via text if they can, to make sure that they know that the power is going out. They will also call them if they haven't heard from them, and they will also go do door knocks and check on people at the house and make sure that they've gotten the messages, and maybe they're not getting in answers because they're not home and they're not in the area, which is, I guess, good news. But I know they do their very best to reach every single person that's on the medical baseline program during a PSPS event specifically.
So the best action a person can take then is to get on medical baseline. Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, that's really helpful. That's helpful to know. Thanks.
Yeah, and in fact, you know what? That's a good statement. Anytime we have these meetings, we should be encouraging anybody who's not already a part of the medical baseline program to get registered. It's on the PG&E website. I don't know the link off the top of my head, but I'll track it down and make sure that we have it handy for our next call. But yeah, yep. If you're in the medical baseline program, you will be notified by PG&E at least. Not sure how Southern California Edison does it, but I can only speak for the area that we're working with directly. Jan, do you have a way? Do you know how Southern California Edison does it?
So Kern County is served by both Southern California Edison and PG&E, and medical baseline customers are text the same as PG&E medical baseline customers. And also here in Kern County, our county OES department, which is like hand in hand with the county fire department. Actually, county fire is under OES. We have a reverse 911 system called Ready Kern that individuals are educated about to sign up for that, so they can get that knowledge in any type of disaster. And then we also here in Kern County have the Smart 911 program, which is dialing 911, but it's additional service provided if you are knowledgeable that we have Smart 911 here in Kern County. You can sign up for that, and first responders will know exactly what your needs are, how many in the household, pets, anything like that. So it kind of works, not for PSPS specifically, but it helps with any type of emergency. But if it's a program that PG&E has for their customers, SCE has the same programs like CareFera, Medical Baseline, SGIP. So if you're a medical baseline customer, you will be getting notified by phone, text, email, however you chose to sign up for it.
Great. Yeah,
Thanks, Jan.
Thanks. And thank you, Bill, for joining us. So I want to kind of bring we're coming up to our last minutes here together. Thank you all. This was a really great conversation. I want to say that some of the next steps will be that I will be taking this and putting together some notes that will go out to the coalition, as well as talking about maybe how we can start to build some of these resources, at least in kind of maybe we can start with the Google Doc even, and start to just see these visually laid out for us, and maybe move towards something. I'd like to see us actually be able to move towards something that that we can put together, that we could say, hey, this would be what I want most people to at least be able to view and access, to help them get grounded in these are the things that need to be done before there is any kind of disaster, right? So I think that that's a really helpful, this has been really helpful for me. It's helped me understand what the emerging issues are. And I hope that for you all, that it's been a space to be able to share and to collaborate as well, or think about things maybe a little bit differently. When I send out these notes, I'd also love to hear from you directly. Feel free to send me an email. I'll be providing all of that information in the notes. But I wanted to make a note that next month's webinar will be on the 4th Thursday of May at this time. That will be the 27th of May. And I will also be using, we're going to be moving to using a registration model for these meetings. So I'll be sending out that registration information along with the notes that come out, but then I'll also be sending occasional reminders as well to the coalition listserv. And if any of you are not yet on the California Disaster Strategies Coalition listserv, please let us know. I can get you added to that. And I'm wondering, does anyone have any kind of final or closing thoughts?
Be prepared.
Be prepared. That's a good one there.
The heat's coming.
The heat is coming. Yeah. I think we had one fire down in north of LA already. So.
Yes, we did. Oh, just have a great weekend. How about that?
Yeah. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you, Vin.
And stay well.
Thank you, Russell, very much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Great
everyone.
meeting.
Thanks.
Yep.